Hi, this is Sally, and welcome to Heart of a Soul. I want to thank everybody that's liking, sharing, and subscribing to my videos. I really appreciate the love and support. So to jump right into it, today I'm going to be talking about narcissists. And in my next video, I'm going to be talking about codependency and how I found myself being a codependent, and how the two need each other. So I really didn't even know what these were. I really didn't know what a narcissist was. I've heard it before, but it took me a long time to realize that those were the type of relationships that I was attracting. And there is a lady on YouTube. Her name is Lisa Romano. She goes in full depth about narcissism and codependency and how to overcome them. And a couple of things that she said that stuck out to me was that narcissism is on a spectrum. Okay. And I realized later that I experienced both ends of that spectrum. And another thing that she said is that we all, in one way or another, have narcissistic tendencies. And, we're all a little selfish. We're all a little self-centered. We want the world to revolve around us. Another thing that they do is that they might not take responsibility for their own actions. If you try to bring something to their attention, they might flip it around and now it's your fault. Just very self-centered people. It doesn't have it's not like a psychological condition, but it is a very mental perspective that these people have for themselves. Now, in my experience, my oldest son's father, he was on one end of the spectrum. He was a raging narcissist, very controlling, very manipulative, a pathological liar. Like, he didn't even have to lie, and he just did. He's a fucking tyrant. He just was not a nice person. Now, on the other end of the spectrum was my other kids, their father, and I was with him for 14 years because he just seemed like a really, really nice guy. He didn't argue with me a whole lot. He was actually very, could be very soft-spoken. But it wasn't until later that I started noticing his narcissistic traits. He was still very controlling. He needed to know where I was going, who I was going with, when I was going to be back. And when I would be out, he would call me a couple of times just to say, oh, hey, I wanted to make sure you were okay. I would be driving down the street. I would be driving down the freeway, just getting off work. And he would ask me, oh, where are you? And I'd be like, oh, I don't know. Because when I'm on the freeway, I counted one time because it just seemed very crazy when he was like, well, how do you not know where you are? And it's like, I'm on the fucking freeway. And I counted from my job to pick up my kids and to go home. I had to pass through 13 towns. And for me to be like, oh, I'm in Belmont, and then 2 seconds later, I'm in San Mateo. It's like, I really didn't know where I was at. But he thought I was lying, and he thought that I was somewhere else, and I was always up to something. And he would always make it a point to be like, I don't trust nobody. And it's like, he would make it seem very general, but I would have to stop and ask myself, like, I have 3 kids and spent the last 14 years with you. Like, you don't trust nobody? Like, that didn't seem right to me. And it wasn't until, I don't know, about 10, 11 years into the relationship where I was like, this dude, he's a fucking control freak, right? And even then, I still didn't know what a narcissist was until like way towards the end of the relationship. And I was like, oh shit, right? And but he hit it very well. So he was on the other end of the spectrum because he wasn't like raging about it. He just did it in a very roundabout, underlying type manner. And then it wasn't even until well out of the relationship where I was having a conversation with somebody and I was like, oh, well, he don't ask me that anymore. And he was like, well, no, because he gave the kids phones and now all he has to do is ask the kids where you guys are and what you're doing. And I'm like, oh shit, right? And it blows my mind how these people, their mind works. And but it also made me realize why I'm attracting these people and where is it coming from. And it made me stop and ask these questions. And so that's what I did. And it was like, okay, because growing up, I was taught that I need to take care of my man. I need to cook, clean, do everything for him. So that's what I did. But at the same time, if I brought up an argument to him or brought up a situation to him or to his attention, he would be like, oh, he doesn't do it because he's unhappy. Well, why are you unhappy? Well, I'm unhappy because you don't rub my back and you know I got back problems. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? We got money issues and trust issues, but that's because I don't rub your back. Like, it didn't make sense to me. Now, looking back, it's like, oh, it's because he's a fucking narcissist and super selfish, very self-centered person. But he needed somebody like me, a codependent, to fulfill that. And towards the end of the relationship, when I was changing myself, I was changing that about myself, but and instead of encouraging me, it was like, oh, you changed. And it was like, well, yeah, why would you want me to just continue to cater to you and not feel like I'm being fulfilled, emotionally, mentally, and that's how they work. And so it wasn't until I started to recognize these things in myself that, of course, I had to ask the question, well, where did it come from? Well, most of the things that we're taught are either taught from our parents or the absence of our parents. So we had to figure that shit figure it out from somewhere else. And I didn't realize it and it took me a long time to realize it because my parents, they always fought behind closed doors. They weren't very open about their relationship and the issues that they had and things like that. So we never really knew what was going on. But in all honesty, in the back of my mind, it didn't feel like the kind of love that I would have wanted in my life. So now that I'm older, it's like, oh, okay, now I know who the narcissist was, and now I know who the codependent was. And now I'm able to fix it in myself, because unfortunately what happens is that my parents passed it on to me and I was going to pass it on to my children. But I'm glad I caught it, because now I could try to do something better and try to work on myself and try have less of these tendencies and not pass it on to my children. And that's what's most important here. And that's what I stress in all my videos, that no matter what your situation is, no matter what the topic is, the underlying message is to always go inside. Look inside yourself. Do you need to do the work? Because even if I brought it to his attention and said, which I'm sure I did, like, when you do this, it doesn't make sense to me. How is that supposed to work? And he didn't have an answer for me, but then he would flip it around and tell me how it was my fault. If you're not one that takes criticism very well, if your loved one can't come to you and be like, you know what, this is what you did to me and this is how it made me feel, and without getting defensive and flipping it around, then you might have these tendencies, and it might be something that you want to ask yourself. Am I like that? You know, if your significant other is telling you that you're like that, chances are you might be like that, and you won't know unless you stop and ask yourself these questions. And I had to admit it. I had to admit it to myself that I was a people pleaser, that I felt like I needed to do everything for my man so that he would love me. And I was completely wrong. And so I'll go into it a little bit more in the next video, but what I learned was that I needed to learn to love myself, because how was I going to expect somebody else to know how to love me if I didn't love myself? So like I said, in all my videos, and it might seem like I'm very passionate about this topic because I had to learn it the hard way. And I encourage you guys to ask yourself these questions. You know, we don't want to pass this bullshit on to our kids, and we want to be able to have healthy, happy, open, honest relationships with each other, whether it be with a significant other or whether it be our friends, our family, with everybody. And so I really encourage you guys, ask yourself these questions. Do you have these tendencies? Can your significant other come and openly tell you how they feel? Are you willing to apologize when you know you did something wrong? You know, and that's what we need a little bit more in this world, you know, people to apologize, people to open up and be vulnerable to each other. So that's my message today. Ask yourself those tough questions. I'm going to go into depth in the next video about codependency, and I really hope that you got something from this. If you have some more questions, I really encourage you guys, look up Lisa Romano. Some of her videos could be kind of lengthy, but she has a lot of good information in there. And I'll see you guys on the next video. Bye.